Good afternoon, I'm Vashan Brown with the Midday News. Special welcome if you're watching on onespotmedia.com. Former Education Minister Royal Reid and his four co-accused were granted bail when they appeared in the Corporate Area Criminal Court this morning. They were yesterday charged with breaches of the Corruption Prevention Act, conspiracy to defraud, misconduct in a public office at common law, and breaches of the Proceeds of Crime Act. Now our reporter Andrea Chisholm was in court this morning and now joins us via phone with the latest. Andrea.
Thank you very much, Vashan. Well, as expected, quite a number of individuals were in court today for this high-profile case. Royal Reid, former Education Minister, and Professor Fritz Pinnock, the president of the Caribbean Maritime University, both of them entered the courtroom at about 10:15 in rather good enough spirit. They waved at some of us in the media section, and they also waved and smiled to some persons in the courtroom. The attorneys representing the individuals, for example, Hugh Wildman is representing, Attorney Hugh Wildman, he's representing Professor Pinnock. Christopher Townsend is representing the counselor, Kim Brown Lawrence, and Carolyn Chuck is representing Royal Reid, Sharon Reid, and Cheryl Reid. It was the first to mention this, and Hugh Wildman was pretty colorful in his remarks when he started. He actually said that this case sounds like a big gun without a bullet, because he's expecting that after what happened yesterday with the raids and everything, he thought that he would have seen statements to substantiate the allegations that he outlined earlier. Nonetheless, Vashan, the judge, Senior Parish Judge Vaughan Smith, he granted Mr. Reid bail in the sum of $2 million, Sharon Reid $1 million, Cheryl Reid $500,000, and Professor Pinnock, he got bail in the sum of $2 million. And for the counselor, Kim Brown Lawrence, she got bail in the sum of $1 million. All individuals are required to report to different police stations between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. They've all been ordered to surrender their travel documents to the police. A stop order will be imposed, and they were told not to be seen at the Caribbean Maritime University or the Ministry of Education. And they were also ordered to have their fingerprints given to the police. So for now, that's the update we have, and they should all reappear in court for the next mention date, which is January 23, 2020. Vashan?
Thank you very much, Andrea. No doubt we'll have more from Andrea Chisholm in Primetime News at 7 on this matter. And still on this issue, concerns this afternoon as to whether the case being brought against former Education Minister, the CMU president, and their co-accused will falter. This as questions are now being raised about the amount of information in the public domain. The matter was discussed on TVJ's All Angles last night.
The investigations into the misappropriation of public funds involving former Education Minister Royal Reid and the CMU were first raised at the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee, PAAC. For several weeks, the issue was discussed and persons involved brought before the committee for questioning. Fast forward a few months later, and reservations are being made regarding the level of information that was divulged through the PAAC and how the media handled the information.
I was very concerned about some things that were highlighted, and I expect them to do their job, but I was also concerned about the media, where persons who were deemed to be witnesses, potential witnesses, were giving interviews. Now that I found alarming, because that evidence, if it is evidence, if they come to court, can be challenged based on utterances made and so on and so forth. That being in the public domain was regrettable.
Attorney at law Clive Mullings says from the media standpoint, based on the nature of the case and who it involved, guidance was needed.
We know the need to get the scoop, and of course the tension between and the competition in media. But they have to be made aware of the processes. It's important, for instance, if someone is a potential witness, my view is it should be hands off. Why? Because if you find that you go ahead, you interview this person, you get details, you can jeopardize something else. And you weigh the public interest as against the interest of having a fair trial. And that is something that we need to be aware of. Because while we speak of a fair trial and the constitutional right to a fair trial, someone can raise that issue in a trial and say, listen, I cannot get a fair trial based on the things that have happened, the pre-trial publicity.
But for human rights advocate Susan Goff, the public had a right to know what was transpiring.
Too often we have seen instances where there have been issues that needed thorough investigation, that needed something to happen. And we wait and they sort of fade away, disappear, nothing happens. So there is a lack of trust in the system that needs to be understood.
In responding to the question, should the public be made aware of investigations that are happening, former Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions Carolyn Hay says it has to do with the who and what.
If you're talking about allegations of the misappropriation of public funds as a public issue, there's public interest in knowing that state agencies are directing resources towards investigating with a potential view to charging for criminal conduct persons who are in high position or persons who are in positions of influence or power in society. So in a sense, there's value in knowing about the existence of an investigation. And it's important. And arguably, it could be in some sense more important than if you're investigating stealing Aki, because it's not that the crime is any different. It is the personalities that are engaged that are different. The expectations on them are higher because of the levels of trust reposed in them.
Oshade Masters, TVJ News.
Meanwhile, the PNP said the arrests of Ruel Reid and Professor Fritz Pinnock is a significant first step in efforts to clean up corruption. TVJ News caught up with opposition leader Dr. Peter Phillips in Clarendon, who said the latest development is just a start in dealing with corruption.
A start has been made, but there's much more that needs to be done. We haven't heard anything about the Petrojam situation, for example, which existed long before we heard about the problems at CMU. So we are expecting the FID, MOCA, and the police force to do their job.
He dismissed suggestions that the police acted yesterday because of pressure from the opposition.
I have no evidence of that. I believe that there long ago it was evident to any well-thinking citizen in the country that abuses of public funds had taken place. It's the duty of the security forces, the investigative arms of government to investigate. We have been calling for a very long time. They ignored us, so they have come out now, and I am happy that they have done something finally.
And the opposition is this afternoon calling for Justice Minister Delroy Chuck to immediately withdraw his comments and characterization of the tactics employed by law enforcement in yesterday's operation. Opposition spokesperson on justice, Donna Scott Motley, says Mr. Chuck should have instead expressed his support to law enforcement in bringing the corruption investigation to its present status. Senator Scott Motley said the statement made by Mr. Chuck that, quote, the arrests took place in a manner that looks like Nicodemus in the night, end quote, and other comments on the raid about the timing and intent of the searches are unfortunate. Mrs. Scott Motley also noted that the statement by Mr. Chuck also signals to the international community that the Jamaican government is willing to interfere in and to influence police investigations and compromise the balance of justice for its own political expediency. And it's time for a break, but stay with us. More stories after these messages. Welcome back. Continuing the news. Opposition leader Dr. Peter Phillips is urging members of the new shadow cabinet to quickly finalize plans to be implemented by the next People's National Party PNP administration. As you'll hear in this report, Dr. Phillips also wants the members of the shadow cabinet to operate on the principle of collective responsibility.
On Tuesday, the new shadow cabinet had its first meeting. At the meeting, opposition leader Dr. Peter Phillips delivered a charge to the members. He urged them to use the next 3 months to refine and finalize their policy positions and programs that are to be implemented by ministries, departments and agencies should the People's National Party PNP win the next election. He declared that the PNP would be ready by January 1, 2020 for national elections, and as a result, it was important for the shadow ministers, the party's policy commission, the covenant team and the manifesto committee under Vice President Damian Crawford to be prepared by completing the policies and programs on schedule. Dr. Phillips revealed that he will be meeting with various sector teams over the coming weeks as part of a preparatory work. He said the economic and production ministries, including finance, industry, agriculture, as well as mining and energy, will be first areas to be followed by land, education, environment, and infrastructure. Dr. Phillips said there will also be consultations with the people through town hall meetings to be organized by the Covenant team. According to the opposition leader, there is no good economic news to come in the short term due to the effects of the closure of the Gisco Alpart alumina plant and the impact of a prolonged drought on agriculture. He told the Shadow Cabinet that it would operate on the principle of collective responsibility and members should be aware that anyone who speaks is speaking for all. He urged the group to present a better image than the present Cabinet. The Shadow Cabinet will meet twice monthly. O'Shane Masters, TVJ News.
A call to service this afternoon from Minister of Justice Delroy Chuck for residents of Integrity in St. Mary to become a Justice of the Peace. The call was made at a child diversion function in the parish on Wednesday.
Let's have some more Justice of the Peace in St. Mary so that the workload is spread more evenly and across more bodies. But the important point is we need the full support of everyone for this program to succeed.
On the matter of child diversion, the state is seeking to intervene in cases where minors show signs of bad behavior before they get into conflict with the law.
And we want to make sure that every parish has a justice center. We have one in Port Maria, but we want not only a child diversion officer there, but we want a mediation officer, restorative justice and child diversion officer there, so that simple matters can be settled by restorative justice or mediation without having to take it to court.
Rehabilitation works at the Glendavon Health Center in St. James has finally started. The facility has been without several amenities for some time now. The details in this report.
Rain or shine, the work must go on. This as rehabilitation work at the Glendavon Health Center in St. James has commenced. Member of Parliament for St. James Central, Hewer Clark, says the work is overdue.
For long now that the health center has been serving this community and other adjoining community, and they do it with human service but at menial amount of resources. We would have visited here some time ago, maybe 2 years ago, and we did an entire tiling of the area. We provide a water tank.
The project is sponsored by the Chase Fund at a value of $5 million. Mr. Clark says the money will be used to implement better security measures, among other things.
The money we are going to use to do fencing of the area because, again, you understand the community that the health center is located. And because of that, sometimes the workers are from outside of the community, and there is always a little fear of of being in a situation as in this area. And therefore we are going to do fencing so that they feel at least a little bit more secure. We are going to do some aesthetics work where the lighting is concerned.
Sometimes we will have staff that would come here to work and can't get into the facility for parking because it would be blocked by persons doing other work in this community. So to fence the facility is more than enough to provide some level of security and comfort to our staff. And to put in the necessary amenities, beautification, air condition, is a step in the right direction.
Mr. Clark says plans are also underway to repair the Salt Spring Health Center.
We are looking to get at least $9 to $10 million for the same fencing of that area and some more aesthetic work to provide potable water, because so often the members of the staff, they operate without water in that area.
O'Shane Masters, TVJ News.
In sports, two of Jamaica's reggae girls have urged the Jamaica Football Federation to ensure that the national senior women's team get international games before next February's CONCACAF round. The next FIFA date for women's football is November 4 to 12. forwards Khadija Shaw and Havana Salon have encouraged the JFF to get the players together before the next round of qualifiers.
For me, obviously, you know, it's a tough one. You play the US, the Canada, and we're familiar with them because we played them already when we qualified for the World Cup. But we got to focus on ourselves, you know. They're focusing on them, so we got to focus on ourselves. You know, at the end of the day, is what we want and what we go out there and do. You know, you got to show out and show up, and hopefully when that time comes, obviously, it's going to be hard if we don't get, you know, a camp in between those 3-4 months, because that's what the other teams are doing, you know. They're gelling, and it's going to be tough it's going to be even tougher if, you know, we don't play again until the tournament. So that's just something that, you know, we got to go back and look on and try to see if, as best we can assess the situation and try to get a camp or, you know, international game.
And, you know, I think any chance we get to play together, I think, you know, you've seen we've started to sort of come together as a unit, and we're playing together now. So for me, the wish list would be to get together one more time before we have to compete again.
And Salon, who scored Jamaica's historic goal during last summer's World Cup, weighed in on becoming the country's leading goal scorer.
Yeah, I mean, I think playing with Bunny it's fun, you know, and she's got this killer instinct and this eye for goal. And I think for me, it's fun to, you know, help her do that. I think it's every time I look up, I see her, you know, at the back post, and she's like, come on, get it in, get it in. And I know that if I put it up in the air, Bunny's going to get it. So, you know, she works hard, and she's just a good teammate.
And that's the Midday News. I'm Vashon Brown. Please join us at 7 for Primetime News Package. On behalf of the news, sports and production teams, have a good afternoon.